In the desolate Negev region of southern Israel, a mysterious temple was discovered that was devoted to God and his wife. This was a surprising discovery made there in the 20th century by Israeli archaeologist Yohanan Aharoni. It has revealed some very disturbing evidence about ancient Israel, evidence that makes a powerful connection between faith and fact. Joshua chapter 12 tells us that the king of Arad was one of the figures who was conquered or vanquished by the Israelites when they invaded the land of Canaan. This particular city served an important function in religious and administrative affairs in southern Israel. So even though it wasn't mentioned frequently in the Bible, it did have an important role to play. It was destroyed and rebuilt numerous times through history, including its destruction by the forces of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Ancient Arad was located in the west of the Dead Sea, only a few miles from the modern community of Arad. Arad served as a fortress, an administrative center, and a religious center for the area. It was destroyed a half a dozen times during the Israelite monarchy, but always built back rapidly. It was obviously an important place. An Israelite temple was discovered there that had strong similarities with Solomon's temple. Its entrance was on the eastern side. It had a main room and a most holy place. But there were two altars at the front of the most holy place, one on either side. And these were believed to have been for Yahweh and for his consort, Asherah. Now, Asherah was known as a mother goddess that appears in a number of pagan religions as the consort of the supreme male deity. Investigators found charred remains on the tops of these altars, suggesting that incense or some other items were burned there. Also, inside the most holy place were found two large stones, perhaps meant to signify the presence of Yahweh and his consort Asherah. Apparently, Israel absorbed some of the religious practices of their neighbors. In the main room just in front of the most holy place, excavators also found an altar for burnt offerings. It was built of mud bricks and stones, conforming to the instructions of God's word for building the altar. There were also benches lining the walls, perhaps where worshipers placed the sacrifices or the vessels that were used in worship. It's an intriguing mix of faithfulness to the plans for the temple and worship center, but blended with pagan elements and an unauthorized construction. From all of this, we have the impression that this was a direct competitor of the legitimate temple in Jerusalem, even in the days of King Solomon. Further strengthening this impression are some other items found at this site. More recent excavations at Arad have uncovered about 200 Ostraka, or pottery shards, and about half of them were from the time of the monarchy. Two of these shards are particularly significant. One mentions the names of two priestly families, and the second refers to the house of Yahweh. This is the only known instance of this designation anywhere in Israel. These ostraka further solidify the idea that this was intended to be a place of legitimate worship for the Israelites with an organized priesthood, and that it was intended to compete with Jerusalem. The Bible stipulated that there would be one place to worship, designated by God, and that all idolatrous worship practices were to be eliminated. This was largely ignored until two Israelite figures rose to power. When King Hezekiah began to reign in Judah in the late 8th century, we're told that he sought to eradicate the idolatrous worship at locations in the southern kingdom of Judah. And excavations reveal that the altar and the most holy place in Arad were buried in the time of Hezekiah. In the time of King Josiah, about a century later, this temple was destroyed during his efforts to wipe out all unauthorized places of worship. Putting all of this together, this temple at Arad shows a concern for the Lord's guidelines for the temple and worship. There were remarkable similarities to the temple in Jerusalem, but there was also a blending with religious elements from Israel's neighbors. And there was a willingness to build an alternate temple site and to reject going to Jerusalem as the place of worship. It was a disheartening development, that the worship of God was compromised in such ways by his people. And it's not surprising that during those centuries of infidelity, they endured a number of difficulties. Religious confusion always leads to instability and problems. It was certainly true for the Israelites of that era, and it's true for ours as well. Every generation has the responsibility to be faithful to the Lord and to worship in the ways and places that He indicates. This is an enduring lesson that we can glean from the ashes and debris of Tel Arad, and one that also reminds of the powerful connections between faith and fact found here in the land of the Bible.